Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Back to Brilliance podcast. We're your hosts, Henry and Joseph. Thanks for tuning in. We ask that wherever you listen, that you would subscribe, leave a comment or a review. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Today, we're going to be talking about setbacks or signals and how to turn lows into leverage. And in this episode, we're going to explore how growth isn't about avoiding failure, but it's about evolving through it. So we're gonna go through some of the steps of using reflection, feedback, small pivots to stay on track. And the journey may zigzag, but in the long term trend, it points up. So with that, I want to bring on Joseph, our co-host. Say what's up, Joseph, and take it away, bro.
Hey, how's it going, everyone? So basically today, I wanted to focus on the fact that, we may go up or we may go through highs and lows, but if we keep on the same path, we'll keep going forward, we'll keep going up, right? Change will happen, but if we keep putting in effort, that line will be a diagonal line going upward.
Yeah, that zigzag, that's kind of like the way things happen in life, right? We can't predict what happens to us, but we have to zig and zag, but it's never a straight line, but you're going to end up to the place where you want to be, and that growth, it comes in waves, right? So what forward leaps, but it also comes, with setbacks.
Yeah, exactly. And even though there are some setbacks or some plateaus, it's a wave. The wave will go up, the wave will go down. And so even if you may be off course, then you can, if you're off course, then you can recalibrate, because now you know what you were doing, or you knew what got you there in the first place. So let's say that you had like a good streak of good luck, or you had a streak of good sales, and now this week, you're getting less sales, less views, or whatever the case may be. So you can go back and recalibrate. Well, maybe maybe you weren't following the formula, or maybe you didn't touch upon a topic that people liked, or something along those lines.
Right. Yeah. And that's just a cycle of business, a cycle of life. You have ups and downs, highs and lows, and you're going to always find yourself in the place where, when things are low, those are the times when you have to recalibrate. It's part of the success. It's part of the process. And, there's a saying, the setbacks are only there for comebacks, right? So the thing is that's where the zigging and the zagging, but never standing still, never stopping, during those times, you want to just keep pushing through,
Yeah, exactly. Because again, the long term, it still points upward, right? So like a stock, or like the stock market, there may be volatility, but that doesn't mean that it's going to stay down forever, or it doesn't negate the long-term value. Like Bitcoin, right? There was a big old shoot during the pandemic, and then there was a big crash, and now Bitcoin is worth more than it's ever been valued. So again, just because there was a big dip or big crash on Bitcoin, it skyrocketed to the moon.
And that happens, in every facet of life, you're going to experience those ups and downs. But just know, that you got to keep putting in that effort every day, and it's part of the growth process, so you have to just keep pushing through. And, like I said, one of the things is recalibration. So looking at your journey, in 6 months or yearly chunks, that can help you, it'll reveal, the progress that you're making. That's the thing, is we always have to, write it down, put it on paper so we can see it. So, you can measure it.
Exactly. Yeah. And we've talked about this before, but again, if you break up your year into chunks, well, then you're able to compare each chunk to the next, right? So I personally like to break it up into quarters. And so, we're now in quarter two, almost quarter three. And now I could look back at quarter two versus quarter one and be like, okay, I did this really well, I did that a little poorly, and then I can go from there onwards to quarter three and quarter four. And again, it's just a way to keep track of your progress versus if you're like, okay, if you try to sum up an entire year in one big picture, you're going to miss a lot of details.
And that's how you break things down, you know. And in that process, you know, as you go throughout the year, you're going to experience setbacks, you know, but don't see them as setbacks, see them as stepping stones, you know, not stop signs to hinder you, but to keep you to go forward, you know. So those setbacks, when they do attack and they do come in your life, it means that you're heading in the right direction. If there was no resistance, you know, there's that saying, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? So see the setbacks as stepping stones, not stop signs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And setbacks are not a failure, they're essential feedback mechanisms. So, again, like Henry just said, you know, there are setbacks for the comebacks. And if you can analyze them and you don't approach them as, oh, I'm failing, this and that, you know, if you're like, okay, well, what can I do from this? Then boom, you don't have, it's no longer a stop sign, it's a stepping stone. And a lot of different sources say that with every defeat contains the seed of an equivalent or greater opportunity. So even though, you know, for example, and this is one example of many, but you know, Gordon Ramsay, he has started so many businesses, and now a lot of them are successful. But I want to say the first three that he attempted failed, and you know, it wasn't until his fourth or fifth try that he actually started to see some growth and some success. So even though you don't have to start 5 companies to get that success, you know, you can be like, okay, well, I've been having some struggles with this or that, but now it's lining me up to be successful.
That's something that you gain during the setbacks, right? You can't say you understand or you know until you've really gone through it, you know. And when you go through it, you if it doesn't work, it's not failure. It's just another way it didn't work. So always, that's why we're talking about like the recalibration, breaking things down into smaller chunks. So you know you minimize a lot of that you know setbacks, and you're able to see it. You know, as you continue to grow, you can then begin to spot the trends, and it helps you, you know, in the long term and in the short term, you know, to use it as a stepping stone.
Exactly, yeah. And again, turning a stop sign into a stepping stone, all that is learning to frame difficulties as part of the journey, right? That's a mental shift that builds resilience. So, you know, people can look at a slow month or like a slow quarter as like, oh, my business is failing, this and that. No one wants my ice cream, you know. Well, you know, if you can start picking up on the right things, well, now people will want you again, or you know, then you'll start picking up momentum again. And so all it is just riding the wave, right? You have to ride the wave of life. You have to ride the wave of your business. You know, you have to come every day showing up for the highs and the lows.
Right. And that's the thing, you know, in business or life, wherever you're at, you know, you know, when you have those setbacks, it's a good thing because it does bring about, you know, a growth mindset, you know. But you have to embrace the process, you know, not just the outcome. Don't just look to, oh man, it should have went this way and it went that way. Learn from it, you know, and take something from it, you know, and see what can you have done better next time, you know, because there will be a next time if you continue to push through, which we encourage you to do. Don't take it as a stop sign like, oh man, this isn't for me. It's about those mind shifts and changing, you know, and bringing about that growth mindset. It's going to help you to get to that next level.
Exactly, yeah. And again, challenges, criticism, and setbacks are not threats; they're teachers. You know, if you lose a fight or if you lose something, right? It's not a loss. it's only a loss if you don't learn anything from it. So you either win or you learn. And again, a setback is an opportunity to learn. And so if you're in the belief that you're a work in progress, you're no longer going to think of yourself as a failure because you're like, hey, I'm working on it, I'm improving. So then you can grow from that resistance.
And it just makes you more resilient, when it comes down to it, the setbacks and things like that. Um, every business goes through it. Again, we're talking about the highs and the lows, and we're talking about, like when you experience these setbacks, how to turn them into leverage. That's the key that we're trying to bring home to you, is that like all these things are set up for comebacks. So take these, take these in as tips and tools. Maybe you're not going through it right now, but you might know somebody, and you can share this podcast with them, and it'll help them, because in business, we can't predict anything, only what we put into it. So just changing that mindset, embracing the process, definitely can help you.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off of what you just said about the continuous effort, the Japanese have come up with a phrase called Kaizen. And pretty much all it is, the whole concept is just small daily actions that compound into massive long term results. So again, laying brick by brick, nail by nail, inch by inch, you'll get a new house, you'll get a new whatever. You'll be putting in the small effort that you need to every day to see the long term result.
It doesn't need to be dramatic breakthroughs, just staying consistent, micro progress is going to help you along the way, in the journey. So it's compound, if you, for instance, if you just do 10 sit-ups or 10 push-ups, it doesn't sound like a lot, but you do it 5 times a week. Well, now you just knocked out 50. You do it times a month, you got 200. It's 200 more than you would have done, and it's beneficial to your body. So just the small little compound things they do, or the small little things, actions do, compound.
Yeah, exactly. And something that I have started to ask myself, and this is something that my life coach really instilled in me, is basically asking yourself, what can I do to move the needle today? Or what's one thing I could do 1% better today?
Very true. And that's the thing. Just always challenging yourself. If you're stuck and you feel like, things aren't going my way, or they're not in my favor, just do something. Just 1% better today, than you did yesterday, and you'll feel much better for it. It's the power of, continue, improvement, or as Joseph just said, Kaizen. Putting that into effect will help you in the journey.
Exactly. And it will help you ride the cycles of life or ride the wave better, because then if you improve every day, despite your business maybe not being fruitful for a quarter or a week or whatever, then because you're improving every day, you're able to turn lows into leverage. So then you can help with the dissolution precedes growth, right? So if you feel like, oh, things aren't turning out the way I want them to right now. Well, again, if you show up every day and if you put in the work every day and to learn, again, turning a stop sign into a stepping stone, well, then that whole dissolution of, oh, I'm not succeeding right now, or, oh, I'm a failure, then that can turn into growth, because despite you thinking, oh, I'm this or that, you still showed up every day, you still put in the work every day, and you still improved. So then it turned out to be growth.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's the thing. Again, we're always going to experience highs and lows, ups and downs. That's just a fact of life, business. It happens. So it's what you do when you're in those down times. So this is this stuff that we're encouraging. Is turning those lows into leverage. Sometimes it's just outdated. mindsets that are keeping you in that setback. You know, it can be a number of things. So like when you recognize the patterns and you start to understand, like, hey, why do I constantly go through this year after year? It's the same thing over and over. There's definitely something that has to take place, you know.
Exactly. Yeah. If you keep coming up on the same problem, well, maybe you need to find a solution for that problem. You know, if you know that let's say every fall, there's a downswing, well, then how can we anticipate that like we did in the last episode? How can we anticipate that and make an action from that? And then these down cycles or these valleys are fertile ground for transformation. They're not a failure.
Very true. You know, and that's the thing. Like I said, you never fail. You either learn, you know, what doesn't work so that way you can change it, you know, or growth comes out from it, you know. So it's never a failure. You know, it's always turning your lows into leverage. Like, okay, what can I learn from this? How can I do better? And, you know, how can I help somebody in the process as well, you know?
And again, it just goes back to action despite ambiguity, right? So even though the wave might be going down or up even, you have to put in that consistent effort, right? So even though if you're in a downswing, you might feel uncertain, you might feel unconfident, you might feel X, Y, and Z, but again, as long as you keep moving step by step, brick by brick, inch by inch, you know, that will be a good antidote to fear, because you won't be in the same exact spot a month from now, a quarter from now, right? So even though you may doubt yourself, if you keep moving forward, well, now that ship is in a different spot. Maybe there's better water in that different spot.
Listen, don't wait to feel 100% ready, because it's never going to come. You're only going to learn by doing, you know, and putting in the work. Like I said, you always learn from, we learn from our mistakes, right? So the thing is that when you take that time to learn and put in, like, you know, it's like, okay, what didn't work and what could I do better? So don't wait till you feel ready. Just start doing. You know, that's my advice. Just start doing.
Yeah, and that's something that I've really, really had to drive home to myself this year is, you know, that is what plagued a lot of my growth for a while was, you know, I would wait until I felt like I had the perfect plan to execute and that I had every skill necessary and that I had all my ducks in a row. I had my shoes on tied, you know, whatever the case may be, whatever superstition may hold you back from starting, but all it is stopping you from starting or stopping you from continuing, because maybe you're like, oh, well, I have to have X, Y, and Z before I continue going. No, because, you know, you're not going anywhere. And not only that, but clarity often follows action, right? So kind of like Myron Golden talks about this, but, you know, you want to make a product or if you want to make a product, ask people what they want or what can solve their pain point versus what do you want, right? Because I'm guilty of this too, but I'll make something thinking that people want it, but people don't actually want it because it doesn't solve anything for them. So if you were to, you know, just make a product or go out and do the action of asking people what do they want, you're putting yourself out there, and then you will get clarity as to what the market wants.
Clarity always follows action, not the other way around. So it, you know, once you get started and you just start moving, you know, momentum comes, you know, and then the clarity begins to unfold before your eyes. You know, but it's taking that first step, right? So not looking at this setback as a stop sign, but more of like a green light for you to go and continue to, you know, grow and stuff like that. So you kind of like adapt, you know, to your situation, you know, you make the adjustments that you need so that you could advance, you know, to the next level.
Exactly. So, and like Henry said earlier, it's also the ability to learn or unlearn and then relearn the core growth skills. So, like, you know, maybe you have let's say you have 5 years of marketing experience or 5 years of sales experience, but maybe your advertisements haven't been as successful as you would want. They're not reaching the KPIs that you want, or maybe your sale close rate is not what you want. Well, maybe you got to resharpen up or relearn some sales principles, because maybe in your 5 years, maybe you missed something, or maybe there's like a new mindset shift that you need to have to make those skills even better.
Definitely, I agree. And that's the thing. We're always learning, right? In everything we're doing, nobody has it all figured out. That's the reality,
Mm-hmm.
And we can all learn from each other and help each other, and that's the core thing of growth is learning from each other, and you know, that's why we always recommend community. We have our community as well. Because everybody needs somebody, right? So the if you're stuck, sometimes talking to somebody else that's been through it can help you get unstuck. So it sounds easy to say, like, just learn or unlearn what you're going through, but sometimes when you're in the midst of it, it's hard to make a change. But when you hear somebody else that's gone through it, and you get that feedback from somebody else, you're able to recalibrate, and readjust yourself so that you can advance.
Yeah, exactly. And something that we've recommended a few times is just to journal, even if you don't have people around you. If you're not in our community, for example, of like-minded people that are able to help you get unstuck, well, then you could at least journal. And this is something that I've done for myself, which is, I've kept a journal for so long that I can go back and be like, okay, well, what problems did I have 2 years ago, and am I still having those same issues? It doesn't have to be as long, right? You don't need to have a 2 year journal just to figure out where your problems are. But again, if you break your year up into quarters, you can be like, okay, well, what problems did I face last quarter and this quarter? That way I know what to anticipate for next quarter.
And that's the thing, having it written down or document it, you're going to be able to see it. So the good thing about documenting it is that you're able to see it, spot it, and you can see the trends, So it's like, what's holding me back? What's keeping me from progressing? You're going to see it, plain as day, because it's like, oh man, I've been doing this for the last 2 or 3 years, because I've had a journal like that too. And I went back and I looked at it and I was like, hey man, I'm still doing some of that stuff I was doing
Yeah.
then, and I'm like, then I question why, right? So, and it's a lot of times it's, we just get accustomed to it, and we don't see it as a problem. But when you see the results that you're not getting the results that you want, then that's when it's time to deal with that stuff. So, yeah. Well, with that, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and go back over this. So remember, setbacks are signals, and they help you to, to see like something's wrong. So it's like it's about finding the solution, right? Um, and understand that progress, it follows zigzag. It's not a straight line, right? So you're gonna that, but it's all part of the growth process. So enjoy it, because the growth comes in waves, and just understand that setbacks are just stepping stones. They're not stop signs. So keep going, guys. Learn from it. The growth mindset. Embrace the process. And you're gonna continue to do really good. Don't give up. That's my point. Is in these times, when it feels like, man, everything's down, just know that the one constant is change. Things will never stay the same, so things will change. So with that, Joseph, is there any final thoughts you want to add to that before we close up?
Yeah, exactly what you just said. Don't stop, keep going. Because even though, if you're going through a rough time, you don't stop, you keep going, because that rough time won't be forever, right? Especially if you're constantly improving and constantly trying to figure out your next step. And so there's no reason to stop. There's no reason to falter. All it is for you to reassess and be like, okay, what can I do now? And that's what life is, right? You can't just be like, okay, I'm going to stop living today. And, you'll just like stay in the same spot for the rest of eternity, right? It's always, okay, what can I do now? What can I learn now? And that's what it's all about. And just to say, talk about our community again, right? It's for people or entrepreneurs if they're tired of doing everything alone, if they feel like they don't have a community that can bring them out of a rut. We have a community that combines practical self-growth tools, community support, and weekly structure to help you stay focused and follow through. So that's at backtoBrilliance.com. Find our community section, and boom, you'll be connected to like-minded people.
All right, thank you for sharing that, bro. Appreciate that. And again, guys, we thank you guys for tuning in to our podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a message or a comment. It helps great people like you find our podcast. And with that, we're out. We'll catch you on the next one. Stay blessed.
Bye-bye.